I personally have never been like, oh my God, Barbara Smith, you ordered a blue thing? Hold on, let me bust out my binder. Do, 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 do. Wait, when was it? Do, 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 do. Ah, Blue KitchenAid, which by the way, our printer printed black and white, so that's really not helping me find it either.
Oh, welcome back.
Yay! And also, now that I've moved, my husband did make the joke for those who watch on YouTube that because I'm in a new apartment and the background is obviously different and better and the lighting is better because I'm high up on a floor, my husband was like, oh, people will think season two, budget's increased.
I'm excited to be back. Before I jump into my first actual topic question, um,
Mhm.
any hopes and dreams for this season of our podcast?
Oh. Any hopes in wow, she's throwing a curveball at me, guys. She did not prep me for this question. Um, honestly, I hope more people who listen, because I know we have some regular listeners out there, give us more feedback about what they want, what they don't want. It's usually when I see someone in person. Actually, a couple of days ago, yesterday, I saw someone who works on the same street I work on, who I know listens to the podcast, and we were chatting about just retail life. She was telling me about all sorts of craziness going on in her job. And I said something with the podcast, and then I was like, well, what do you think about this? And she did have answers. And I want people to feel encouraged, just give us those things without our prompting. Like we're both of us are like ready. We're like, what do you got to say? Good, bad, ugly? We'll take it all. So just more engagement and then more guests coming soon, hopefully.
Yeah, exciting. And if I could ask why do you think, why is it important that we hear from more people?
You know, your experience and my experience combined is a lot of different, there's so much different experience in there in the industry and at different levels. But retail is hundreds of billions of dollar industry. There's so many facets, there's so many things that can happen. I just want to make sure that we're covering all of it in a way that feels real to people and not just through your lens or my lens. And I think that that's important so that we're really getting the whole story.
Yeah, I agree. And the nuance matters so much.
Hmm.
So it's really great to hear from someone, even if it's, I heard this, but, or this really resonated to me. Here's an example. All that context helped me so much.
Agreed.
Okay, today I want to ask you a little bit about how how stuff reaches you in the store. Um, I've heard a lot of stories about, you get there's no shortage of initiatives and mandates and communications. So I kind of want to come at it from this angle of like, yeah, we got the memo, but we don't have the why.
Hmm.
So if we can kind of table the idea that some of these initiatives that are landing on your desk are just inherently bad.
Hmm.
Table those for a sec. Let's talk about things that could have value.
Hmm.
Let's say a corporate team has built a potentially valuable program, initiative, whatever it is, and it lands on your desk, but they often, even if it's great, they often skip the narrative layer.
Hmm.
That like honest human explanation of what they're trying to do and why it matters to you now. And so by the time it gets to you, there's just no context. You just have instruction. And I think from what I've heard to a lot of store managers without the context, it's just more noise. It's just another task. Can you walk me through the last time a program landed on your desk with zero context? Anything coming to mind?
I've thought about it for the last couple of days. There's so many things that have come across in my like almost, my like 15 years of being a store manager. Um, so many things have come at me across my email, across the desk, so to speak, with very little explanation as to why. I would say that that's actually more than norm, right? And I would say to actually go back to what you said, I think a lot of things that companies do, hot take, um, giving them credit, we've had some time off, so I'm refreshed now. Um, but a lot of the initiatives that come across have some value in them. Like there's a reason a team in corporate came up with the idea. It wasn't just for fun. I would say a policy is a lot of times you don't get a why, whether it's like a loss prevention policy change or like an HR policy change. And not to jump ahead, but I think a lot of times it's like well, this is an LP policy change, so we don't need to give you the why. Like, just do the thing and shut up about it. At one company I was at, we did change how we did again, very unsexy example, but we did change how we did the cash log at night, like how we counted the cash and how we inputted that and how we like tracked discrepancies. And it went from more paper to a more physical version, but they didn't explain like why or who came up with this. It kind of came out of left field because it was literally like, starting today, this is what you're doing. And so that's always like an interesting feeling when you get that, especially when it's a last minute change. And I would say those are the changes also that often don't come with explanation, right? Like if a company has like internally, like in corporate, has like a 3-month lead time to before they're going to tell us something. In some of those meetings, they've discussed the why and what they're going to tell us the why is. I would argue, and I wish I had an example, that sometimes the why they give us is not the real why in those scenarios, because they don't want to tell us the real why, or they don't want to get into the weeds, so to speak. And then when it comes to last minute policies, you just don't get a why. It's almost like, this is your job, do it. Yeah. And if, sometimes they'll be like that at the bottom of the email. If you have questions, reach out to your manager.
Gotcha. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Every DM I've ever had listening is like, oh boy, does he ever.
So tell me about the LP example. Is that just they assume if they're giving you a changed policy or procedure for loss prevention that it's to improve loss prevention?
Yeah, I think that that's partially why they're not giving us a why. I think there's also just some things like LP, HR are two things that I can think of where I think again, I'm only assuming because no one's ever said this to me explicitly, but I think it's almost like you don't question HR and you don't question loss prevention. Like your job is not to like be like, but why do I have to like do it like this? They're almost like, you just do. And again, yes, you do assume, okay, this is to improve whatever. But also, most retail people that I know, when something like that happens, we're like, ooh, someone did something wrong. And now a new policy has been created. And again, hot take, think there is value in us knowing what someone did wrong. Not so you can shame them. I don't need to know who, where, when. I don't need to know any of the details. And I don't think I can't say for sure, but it does feel like they're like, well, we don't want to give them ideas. So we're not going to tell them the thing that someone broke or the workaround someone found. And I don't know if that's true, but that does feel the case. However, and this happened to me in a job where we changed, and I can't even remember what it was, but we changed something like employee discount policy wise, not the actual like discount we got, but the way that we discounted things. And I remember thinking, oh, someone did something sketchy and that's why they're changing it. And then when I asked my boss, she asked her boss because she was also curious and basically got like also couldn't get the real answer. And I was saying to my DM, the reason I'm asking is not so I can find another workaround. It's also sometimes in those scenarios to just ensure that my team or I have never done the thing that you don't want us to do. Not because I'm doing sketchy things, but because if I'm at a store, you know, sorry, I'm doing math, 250 days a year, who knows? When I've rang up hundreds of employee transactions, it's like, have I ever done that? I don't think I have. But also, what did the person do that was wrong? Because if you're not telling me what's wrong, you're just telling me the new policy, if you as the employee don't know what they're trying to prevent, how do you know you're not going to do it in a new way?
Right. Let me ask, how does this get to you? You get an email?
Most things like this are an email. Yeah. I would say very few things are, Zoom or a meeting. Most things are email.
And then do they also include a memo, like a one pager that you're supposed to print out and post or talk to your team about?
Yep.
Do they give you talking points?
A lot of companies do, yeah. There are some companies I've worked for where there's like a separate manager page, which is like, if they ask this, this is the why. If they ask this, tell them this is why we're doing this. And of course, because I'm me, I often post those pages too.
I mean, makes sense. It sounds like an FAQ. Why would you gatekeep that?
Yeah.
Huh. If you can go back your mental Rolodex and think about the last time you had to print one of those things out, can you remember a time where you were sharing it with your team and you had trouble being authentically convincing about it? You had trouble getting behind it?
And I'll just speak to the collection of times that I can think about this. For me as a leader, I'm probably, one could argue, too authentic. Like I'm just myself. Like the version you get here on the podcast, the version of me that you see on LinkedIn, where, maybe some people think I'm a little unhinged. It's the same version my team gets of me. There's no delineation there. And so for me specifically, if I have to walk people through something and I don't understand the whys or I don't understand the purpose, if I try to BS, my team sees through it. Um,
Yes.
but I struggle because if I don't BS, then I risk them not complying because they're going to be like, well, Matt thinks this is stupid. So why should I even do it? And I think with some of those policy things, even because I think if my team knows that we're not bad at that thing, whatever it may be, um, like let's say it's like a discount policy and they're becoming overly didactic about like save every receipt, scan the receipt, send it in the closing email, whatever the thing is about like employee discounts. If my team knows, like, first of all, half of us don't buy a lot here, and the ones that do, like, we do have the receipt, like, it's not a big deal. Like, we know no one's like getting away with anything. People might just not be like, well, this is pointless. Like, this is a lot of busy work just to prevent something that's not happening in our store. Because I think sometimes when it comes to LP and HR things, there's an overreaction that happens. And I think that's sometimes why I want to know what happened. Because for me, with the cash log thing, for example, in a company that changed from like paper to like more digital, it was a shared document. So basically, they could see your cash log in real time.
Right.
And so for me, totally fine with that. I'll change last minute. We can do that. A why would be nice, but also like, was one store doing something sketchy? Because if we're changing all of this because of one store, that seems like a wild overreaction. Or you like dug in and there were like 7 stores stealing deposits. Like, so to me, and I'm not saying you even need to tell us deposits were being stolen. You can use missing, you can use euphemisms if you want. Um, but I do think knowing, because again, there is that level of also assuredness that comes when you go, okay, well, definitely no one's stealing deposits in my store. I know because personally I hand them off to Brinks and I know that we're not doing anything and I've made sure all the money is where the money should be. So, okay, cool. I'm going to switch to this new thing you want us to do. No problem. I'm going to explain to my team why. And I might even explain to my team, hey, money went missing. We're not stealing. So we can just follow this policy and know that we're doing the right thing. Now, if you don't tell us that, the question becomes, is there something else that people were doing wrong? Was there a way that they were record keeping that was just incorrect? And that's why this change? So it's like, and then it's like, were we one of the ones doing the record keeping wrong? And we just didn't know? That's also useful information. And actually, in that example, I did ask my boss, I said, was someone stealing money? Can you just like say that so I can just know that I'm good? And she was like, someone was indeed stealing deposits. And I was like, okay, great. Thank you. Because now it's like, I know I'm not stealing deposits. I know that there's no money missing. So now I'm just going to follow this new policy. And quite frankly, the policy makes sense if you had people stealing money. Um, but it's again, if I only got that why because I asked, because I'm like an annoying 3-year old that cannot do anything unless I get the 4-point PowerPoint around why.
Well, I think it's a really fair question, especially if it's adding load to your day to
Yeah.
day. Like that only makes sense. No corporate leader that I've ever spoken, no retail corporate leader that I've ever worked with is in denial about store managers and store teams having a lot on their plate. And so they're aware that if they're about to add more, like they're cautious of that. And so if that decision was made, there has to be a why behind it, and I think it's fair to share it with you. And what I'm hearing is when they don't, you're left, uncertainty sucks, and you're left to make up why this is happening. And often humans go to worst case scenario, like I've heard, and just you talking then, fear, right?
Mhm.
Like fear that you or someone has done something wrong and wouldn't even know about it. And I think it says something about retail or the corporate world in general that you think that's how you would hear about doing something wrong, a corporate wide policy change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, now that you're saying it, yikes. Okay. Um, well, I do think, and not to go down this road too much, because it isn't the question you're asking. And this is more a different topic, sort of, which is I think when it comes to policies in general, we often don't get the why. And the biggest example I can think of, it's actually I've said the phrase pet peeve a lot in our call, so I can't say that this is like actually number one or anything, but it feels pretty high up there, which is paperwork retention policies. If you want to get me really passionate about something that seems really stupid, that's the topic. Because I've worked so many places where, because by the way, in case anyone doesn't know who's listening, but most retail leaders probably do know, every place has a paperwork retention policy. How long do you save receipts from the register for? How long do you save HR paperwork? How long do you save sales reports, etc.? All 3 months, 6 months, a year, like different stores, different policy. I remember I worked somewhere that we had so much paper. There were so many binders that I was like, why are there 9 binders? Why? And so I'm going to be honest, I stopped doing it when I got there. I was like, I'm not doing all of this busy work with papers. I eventually got in trouble. And I asked the ops person for the district who came for a visit and basically gave me this like ops audit, which I failed miserably. And they were like, because you don't have the binders. And I go, totally cool, Brian. Was his name Brian? Whatever. Totally cool. I'll do whatever you want me to do realistically, but like, why do we save this paperwork? Like, I don't like, when am I ever going to reference this, or when is someone else going to reference this other than the ops audit that you're doing right now? Because up until that time, I had an ops audit, by the way. No one had ever asked to look through those binders. And that was like 9 months after I started. Like, no one's ever asked for this information. And I personally have never been like, oh my God, Barbara Smith, you ordered a blue thing? Hold on, let me bust out my binder. Do, 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 do. Wait, when was it? Do, 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 do. Ah, Blue KitchenAid, which by the way, our printer printed black and white, so that's really not helping me find it either. Um, so like I gotta look up the date, I gotta find Barbara Smith. Meanwhile, the portal, I can just type in Barbara Smith and hit search, and there it is. Every order Barbara Smith has ever placed in Hingham, Massachusetts. And retail is so compliance driven that we're all like, well, I guess we'll just do this new thing. And I guess we file it in the new app and then print a copy out and put it in that other binder.
And it needs to be said, this coming from a guy who really likes paper, who prefers analog.
Yes. This is coming from someone who, when Becky sends me an outline for the podcast episode, ladies and gentlemen, I print it out because I like to see it. And by the way, I wish it was in reach of me right now because it would be funnier. I put it on a clipboard. 'Cause that's how I do things.
What I really want people to hear from this, and what I'm hearing from this, and what I really hope any corporate retail leaders are hearing is I wish they could put themselves in your position when these things land on your desk. Because I think to them, it's like, yes, we've done all of this work, we've done all this research, this makes sense to us. We'll hand them this tidy package, and yeah, their job is they're so compliance driven, they'll just do it. But what I'm hearing again, going back, like aside from the fear we talked about, pointless, right? Like you said, like this feels pointless. I don't understand. This is asking me to relay something to my team that is disingenuous to me. Like your team knows you. Like imagine if you're a leader, like listening to this, imagine having to go to your team and tell them something that's going to cause them take them more time in the day, cause them a little bit more work, and not really be able to tell them why. Like, actually consider that. And but then also underneath that, reduced trust. Like so many of the examples that you talked about, where did someone do something wrong? Did we do something wrong? Okay, well, if someone did something wrong, I get now why we have this extra cautionary measure. That is again saying that's like the LP policies that we talked about. We can't trust you. Now you have to prove your integrity through this additional step is another thing. And all of this is contributing more, I feel like, just dividing a bigger wedge between the us them of
Mhm.
stores and corporate, whether it's because they don't trust us or they just don't get us. This thing is stupid and pointless, but they're asking us to do it and we have to. That's
I,
what I'm hearing.
yeah, and I think this in typical Becky fashion, this like sort of simple question you're asking me touches so many other things. So I almost can't stay on topic. It's like what you're asking me dips its hand in all of these other pools. Because I think the question that's now coming on my mind is, before you change the policy that's going to eventually come across my desk, and now I have to do something else to prove or disprove or whatever. Did you ask why stores aren't compliant in the first place rather than taking an extra step? And I think the perfect example I'm going to give you, it's another one of Matt's. I'm going to have to write a list actually. So we've got paperwork that's unnecessary. The other thing that will drive me crazy is actually price signs in stores. I've never worked someplace in my life, not one single place, and everyone knows all the places I've worked from listening to this podcast or looking at my LinkedIn. I've never worked somewhere where a company has figured out price signs. Not once, not even close. Um, Either they, I want everyone to know who's listening and can't see Becky because they're not watching on YouTube. I can see the wheels turning in her brain, like, oh my God, does this have to be its own episode? Like, is like we need to go into this. But so companies either send you price signs like in a packet, right? Like through the mail, because they need to look official. Think companies like, Williams Sonoma, American Eagle, etc. Or companies sometimes print them in store. Think Target, Macy's, and not just big companies, because I've worked for small companies that print in store as well. I've also worked in stores where if you print them yourself, you could get in trouble because it needs to be the official ones they send in the packet. But why I'm saying this is an issue everywhere and no one's done it right is because it's so convoluted. And everywhere I've worked, when you get a visit, or when multiple, like a whole market gets a visit, we've gotten the feedback in every company I've worked for that they have found missing signs or incorrect signs or signs placed in the wrong place. Um, Again, everywhere I've ever worked, I want someone to fix this, please. And so why I'm saying this though is, rather than think through why is this happening? Like, why are we going to a store 10 miles away and there's one standard and then going to another store? Like, what is the roadblock? Is it the way the policy laid out? Is it that we're not sending enough signs? Is it that we're not sending enough sign holders that actually hold the signs? Because in different companies, it's a different problem. So instead, what they do to fix this, by the way, in a lot of companies, is they're like, okay, price change is happening Friday. By Monday afternoon, you have to validate that you've done it this way, and you need to send us pictures of every price sign or these key areas or whatever the case may be. And then obviously stores do that. And then if stores can't do that, that's when they're like, hey, I don't have enough signs, or you never sent me enough sign holders, or whatever. And then they get what they need. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I can almost guarantee those stores asked for those things a long time ago and were never heard. They never got the signs. They probably said to someone, hey, just so you know, like in my store, we have the women's basic tees in 4 locations because I have a weird shaped store. So I actually need, every time you change the price of those things, I need 4 signs. But they only send 2 because everyone else has 2. And then every time they get 2, and then they leave 2 locations unsigned, or they print them out themselves and just get in trouble every single time they get a visit. They explain to the DM, the regional, whoever, yeah, I need 4 signs, but you only send 2. Everyone's like, yeah, we'll take a note. Nothing ever happens. It only changes because someone keeps coming into stores finding things wrong. Then they force you to send pictures. That leads you all the way back to what someone told you probably 2 years ago. They need more signs sent. And so that's another piece of this policy chains puzzle that, again, by asking a simple Becky question, there's another layer to peel back.
Yeah. I think I think this goes back to I imagine it's connected to the larger brand conversations we've had too. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
probably some stores you worked in where you had a deep understanding of the brand and enough institutional knowledge that maybe you didn't need as much context.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least if things came across your desk without a why, without context, your red flags of someone did something wrong or they are trusting us less for some reason wouldn't go up in the same way.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
My Yeah, so my kind of question, and I have a feeling this is going to lead to its own episode, but what is let's say you get something and it's from HR. To set the tone, to give us the context, to you, what is the role of HR?
Oh, yikes. Um, I have to ask a clarifying question. Do you want me to answer this what I really think is the purpose of HR, or what companies think the purpose of HR is? Because they're actually 2 things.
Yeah, so I really want to understand why if something from HR, a policy or whatever it is, gets to you in the store. I want to know the frame it's going to, the framing in your mind of HR. So I want to know what you think of HR, and that's going to help us understand why you're because you have to assume if they don't give you a why you're making the assumptions you are.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so from my perspective, HR's role is to ensure that the company is legally safe and protected, and that the employees at the store level and in corporate, obviously, because they have their own HR, are following the things that are going to keep the company from stepping in some legal snafu.
So it has nothing to do with your experience at work.
No. Well, I mean, it has nothing to do with engagement or anything like that. That's what you're
Yeah. Gotcha. So it makes sense then that that's how you would, you have to bucket these things mentally somewhere.
saying.
It makes sense that they would go to a kind of negative place in a lot of situations, even if there's merit to what they're asking.
Well, and to you had said something like about my experience and me kind of like knowing. And I think one of the interesting things is I've been in a lot of roles recently where I've had people who are not as tenured as I am in retail. And the younger generation, I'm going to throw this out there on the podcast. Shout out to Gen Z. I love them. I love them. They're little menaces. They're little menaces who give zero, you know what's about policy or procedure or the way things should be or would be or were. And they got questions coming out the wazoo. Keep them coming. If anyone is going to destroy everything we've ever known about industry, it will be them. And I love it. I encourage it. I stoke the flame sometimes. But all of that to say, they don't have the context I have. So when these policies come across, oftentimes all I hear from them is like, did they not think we were doing enough? Like they gave us something else to do. They didn't think we're giving enough. And then I'm the one, even with like the cash log type situation, that has to go, here's the thing. I've been in retail long enough. When someone changes a policy that has to do with cash log, attendance, like all of these like sort of LP or like compliance driven things, it's because someone did something wildly wrong. And now they're trying to overcompensate by being super strict to everyone rather than just finding the troublemakers and punishing them. Like now we're all getting collectively punished. Here's what they, and I will tell my team, here's what I think happened. Here's what I think. This is my best guess, spending all the time I've spent in retail as to what occurred. And sometimes they'll look at me like, people do that? And I go, people do all sorts of things. Like people, customers defecate in fitting rooms and like, employees like, uh, I'm trying to think of a safe word, copulate in an LP office. Like it's all happened. Whatever you can imagine in retail has happened. Okay. So when I see a policy, even if I think it's a waste of time, I do go, well, it finally happened here, whatever the thing is. And so then I give the context to the people who haven't been in retail. And I almost make it not funny, but like I always try to find a reason that we're doing something that makes them kind of laugh and go, oh my God, that's crazy. Oh, no wonder they want us to waste all of our time doing this. Because at least then I can get my employees to do the thing we need to be doing. But in the back of my mind, most times I'm like, this is so dumb. Like whatever it was, it probably happened in one store. And now you're making 200 stores do this. Because again, my question is, because this is the other layer of the question you're asking, and this is something I've always wanted to know. What the hell is the point of a DM then?
Say more.
Like, if a DM, even if they have 10 stores, even if they have 12 stores, because I realize that stores are more complicated than an individual employee. I do realize that, just so we're clear, DMs listening. However, you have 12 stores. At an Old Navy, I have 60 employees. You can't keep track of 12 things. I have to keep track of 60 things. Like, so you can't make sure 12 stores are doing their cash logs properly? Like, there isn't a way to do that? Because I have to be sure 60 people follow the attendance policy, the dress code policy, the, sexual harassment policy, I have to make sure 60 people do all of these many things. You can't make sure 12 stores are following these procedures. So instead, we're going to come up with because to me, that should be a DM's job. Not just compliance, by the way, because their job should actually be engaging and developing teams. But what is the point of a DM if not to ensure those things are not happening?
That's a great point. Yeah. Okay. As we kind of start to wrap up, what's the minimum then you need as a store leader? What do you need from corporate to really get behind something, not just comply with it to stay out of trouble, but to commit to it? And so maybe it's, whether it's a policy or an actual program, right? That you get measured on. Like, what gets you to get engaged and not just go for the bare minimum or compliance and actually get committed?
It's as simple as, and I feel like we could just take me saying this and make it the evergreen answer at the end of every podcast episode. Um, but it's really as simple as, what is the truth? Just give us the truth. You don't need the jargon, you don't need the lingo, the euphemisms. Um, I don't need any of those things. I just need, there was a reason this policy changed, or there's a reason you think this is a great idea. Just give us the why. Like something triggered you to say, now we want you to do this. What was the thing that started it? What was the, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe not just the why, but like what got in someone's brain that like this system or this thing was broken in the first place. Um, because I guarantee you, we can probably agree on that. I might not agree fully on the solution you've come up with, but I can almost guarantee that we will all agree, oh, yeah, this does suck, or this doesn't make sense. Or I too have found that when we don't do, because I might have come up with my own fix in store for whatever the thing is, but now you're giving a universal, this is what we're going to do to make sure this doesn't happen or to make this easier. And if I'm already doing my own thing, I might look at it like, oh my God, this is more work. Because I don't realize what you're trying to do is fix the thing I already sort of fixed with my own thing. But if you give me that, what started this was we found in stores, because this is all you need to say. You don't need to tell us who, where, when. You don't even need to tell us when. Just when we were doing store visits, we saw this and we thought, well, this doesn't make sense. And that is why we're rolling out this new thing. Because guaranteed, I've also seen the same thing, whether in my own store when I first started, or when I got promoted, or when I got transferred, or whatever. Like, I too saw the thing you're saying, and I agree. And that will help me go, okay, cool. So now we have an agreed upon solution to a problem we all saw that I, quite frankly, didn't think you realized was a problem.
Man, there's so much. I want to just acknowledge that it's wild. It is quite rare that you get asked, right? Like it's, if you see a problem in some stores and you know that some stores aren't having that problem or have solved that problem, I would just invite corporate leaders to just ask for a store proven solution, something that's already working in stores that a store manager has already figured out before maybe rolling out your own policy that maybe makes less sense, that isn't store proven. My follow up questions for you. Let's say the truth sounds kind of bad. Let's say it makes it sound. Maybe they're afraid it's going to make. Maybe they're afraid that it's going to make you think that they trust stores less, and so they don't want to say some store employees have been doing this or implementing this rollout. Is hearing the truth, even if it sounds bad, even if you and I would both agree that it shouldn't be a corporate wide rollout, that someone should be disciplined or dealt with individually, is that better than nothing?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever actually thought about that. Like you saying it like that is interesting because I think it's a mixed bag a little bit, but I also think that our assumptions are often worse than the truth, to be honest. Um, so I think the truth is still helpful. I do think there's a trust issue there, but I think that there's a way for them to communicate that doesn't inhibit trust. Because I think there's a way to say, because I think the best way to say anything like that is, here's what happened. Some stores were doing this and, whatever. We're rolling out this new policy because, frankly, we should have been tracking this all along. And it's our bad that we were not on top of this. This is our miss from the get-go. Because let's say the cash log thing. I mean, I've seen some things in companies where because I will tell you this has happened too, where people roll out something and I'm like, wow, they're finally going to track that. I wonder how many people got away with stealing before they realized that this was a crazy thing to let go. Because I have seen that. And so it's like in those scenarios, I understood why it was happening, but I'm sure there were small managers that were like, they don't trust us. In those scenarios, they could have been like, listen, employees were taking money, and quite frankly, because we're a business in 2026, we should have been digitally tracking deposits because wild that we weren't. Um, so it's like for the employees that were so used to something that was going on for so long, because I think that's the other thing. If you've been letting a really lax policy exist for like, in some companies a decade, and now you're changing it, it can feel like a lack of trust when really what it is you should have had oversight to that thing the whole time. You were just running on vibes. And vibes is not a way to run a business. So I do think that there's also, again, it goes back to like just the acknowledgement. Yeah, we probably should have been tracking this forever, or we should have had this policy since the day we opened the door.
Right. Own their role in it a little bit. How about for the folks who think you don't want to read? You're too busy. You don't want to read the why. You don't want to, you just need to know what to do.
I mean, I think that that's just in how you structure the communication, right? Because I think if you break down, if you have the email in like a I mean, this is overly simplistic, but honestly, kind of fire. I would love this. If it was just like new policy, how this affects you, why? Because even though that's overly simplistic, if it was big and bold like that, the people who don't care about the why, they just can skip it. Where, by the way, just so we're all clear, I'm reading the why before I read the new policy. Um, that's how my brain works. I'm like, why am I doing something new? Okay. Because for my brain, reading the why first will actually help me get my own buy-in. But again, I think if you just structure clear communication, easy to see, like there's no people who want to skip it can skip it.
Well, and you touched on something I think really important that also, I don't know if it gets overlooked, but I think that a lot of corporate teams genuinely struggle with is relevance. Like relevance in the store doesn't necessarily look the same to relevance in corporate, especially if you're on a team. I don't know if you're on the like learning development team or talent development team or sustainability team. News for the sake of news, like corporate news, in a place of urgency in a store, maybe not something you would read all the way through because how is this relevant to me today, this week,
Mhm.
the way I care about my job, but to translate it in a way, how does this impact your day to day, or does it give you an opportunity to feel more connected to the brand or to connect your team to the brand? Yeah, just making that a little more clear when it does reach you.
Mhm.
I've just witnessed a lot of first drafts of corporate communications that are meant to go to stores, and I kind of just feeling like, why should they care? Like why? Because we always hear more communication. Communication is poor here. We want things to be, we want to be more transparent, but that doesn't just necessarily mean more or longer.
Mhm.
It should actually include translating it into why it's relevant to stores. Although you would probably read all the corporate. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm hearing, if we could tell corporate retail leaders, teams, an actionable takeaway, a close, before your next rollout, or if you're updating something, or honestly, if you're training someone new and you're wondering about an old relic of a policy or a procedure that maybe needs to get asked about, go ahead and ask about it. But just send one honest paragraph to stores. Not a booklet. You don't need a $30,000 video of your CEO explaining what this is. Just a paragraph, a real one, about who asked for this, what the problem it was meant to solve, and what you're hoping store teams will actually feel and do with it.
Mhm.
Any final thoughts?
No, that's it. Rewind 25 seconds. Listen again.
Oh, I love it. All right. Good to be back.
Good to be back.
Yeah, and please do take Matt up on what he said at the start of this episode. Reach out, LinkedIn, emails, or easy to find.
Hmm.
All right. Thanks as always, Matt.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.